Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, now we are still continuing our conversations about what's been going on with the wreck and all the science behind it and that sort of thing. And one of the people that's been very much a part of us trying to even track where the oil spill is leaking out to, where the oil slick is, I should say, is that of Mr. Dayreon Mitchell, who is a GIS specialist at TEMA. And like I said, his role has been pretty crucial in terms of us figuring out even how we organize some of the response and that sort of thing. So special good morning and welcome to you, Mr. Mitchell. How are you doing this morning? I know you've been working very hard.
Good morning. I'm okay for now. It's just a lot of work, but we have to get it done. So, as well as thank you all for having me here to give some sort of light on the situation at hand.
Well, certainly. And you know, your maps have been so crucial in terms of like not just helping us here in Tobago figure out, you know, how far-reaching this is, but then also being able to alert Grenada and Venezuela of, you know, a possible threat to their shores. You know, just tell me a bit about some of the work that you've been doing there.
Okay, so it's not really a one-person effort, it's a joint effort. Some of my colleagues from the ODPM as well as the IMA, all GIS specialists or GIS officers, will be using satellite imagery to track the oil slick, because the comparison of the slick, the contrast of the slick to the sea surface is it's easy to identify, especially if you do ground truthing, which is going out on the ground to compare what you see on the map or the satellite image to what is really there. So we do come together, we share information, and then we do reports, we do analysis, and then we produce the finalized products.
What is the latest map of the situation right now?
Before I go to the latest map, I will give you the progression of the slick. So if they could just share the screen, I will just give you the maps in sequential order. All right, so this would have been the first day we identified the oil slick. The main focus that day was actually on the overturned vessel. However, we realized that we were smelling the oil-like substance or hydrocarbon within the Scarborough area. Now, the wind direction, the wind comes from the east and goes to the west. So it's almost virtually impossible to be smelling oil from Cove, and we are in Scarborough. So which means that the slick would have had to come from somewhere further in the east. And we used the Sentinel-2 satellite imagery to identify where the thickness or the contrast in the sea surface was. And we saw this slick approximately 6 kilometers off the coast of Studley Park in that area. Now, out there is a strong current that moves from the east to the west parallel to the shore. So we believe that's where the vessel would have drifted. And because of the lowness and the coral by Cove, that's where the vessel would have grounded off or run ashore. Now, this would have been on the 7th of February, this Sentinel-2 image. If we go to the 9th of February, we saw where the oil or the oil-like substance was leaking out more. It is now 3.7 nautical miles in length, heading out to the Caribbean Sea. We monitored to ensure it wasn't coming into the coast of Killigwin Bay, because we know we have reefs and mangroves within that area, these eco-sensitive areas. So we continue to monitor the progress. The other satellite image would have been released on the 12th. So we go ahead now and we realize it's increasing length drastically, but it's still not coming onto the shore beyond the vessel itself. It's still heading out to the Caribbean Sea, and realize it started moving in a northwestern direction. The slick moved from 3.7 nautical miles in length to 48 nautical miles in length in the course of 3 days. We moved to the 14th, so we started tracking more continuously. And this is where we would have realized it would have left our EEZ, which is the exclusive economic zone. So it's now out of our waters and in the waters of Grenada. Now, when we looked at it, we realized it's 34 nautical miles south of Grenada, and it's also 40 nautical miles north of Venezuela. So that's good for us because it's right in the middle, it's right in between. So it's not directly affecting anyone, but we still have to monitor it. We then took another satellite image that evening just to verify that what we are seeing is actually what we are seeing. And this would have been a compare and contrast, and we did realize that it actually is within their EEZs. Now, it would have reached approximately 30 kilometers inside of the EEZ. This would have been the furthest we saw it reach, and it went as far as 150 nautical miles away from the source. This is where we began to get concerned. But because of weathering, the oil-like substance began to separate and break apart because it's a hydrocarbon.
And that was going to be one of my questions, how thick is it as it continues to spread out into the sea?
The fact that it is identifiable via satellite from, as well as this contrast, as this very clearly here, we realize that, okay, it has to be a thick volume. But what we realize as well is, if you look closer to Tobago on the map, you would realize that it's getting thinner and thinner. But the further it is, that's because the concentration is following the stream. So there is a stream that it is following. So other factors such as ocean currents, wind speed, wind direction, sea surface temperature, all of these would have been contributing factors. Now, this satellite image was on the 15th. Now, if we take a look at what is taking place on the 17th, we realize a lot of weathering has taken place, and the thickness has decreased, and it's now spreading and dispersing throughout the sea. So it's a hydrocarbon is dealing with itself. The rough sea surface, this rough wave current, the rough surf, the strong winds, all of these would have been contributing factors to it dissipating throughout the ocean. And this is the most latest, the most recent image that we have. This would have been on the 18th of February, and we can see that, yes, there is some thick looking like substance, but when we did the ground truthing, it's actually a silver substance, which is oil sheen, because the vessel is no longer emitting a thick oil-like substance. There's just sheen within the water. So that's the kind of rainbow looking thing that we would see when there's oil in water. And that is very good because none of it has gone to the shore. And that's something we're very grateful for. And we haven't received any reports from Grenada or Venezuela of it reaching their shores as well. So while it went into the EEZ of Grenada and a little bit into Venezuela, it did not make any direct contact or impact with them at that point in time. So that is something we were very grateful for.
And certainly, but how much of what we saw on the map was a trail from the vessel coming into Tobago, or how much of it was it when the vessel landed at Cove and continued leaking out? Because there's a theory out there that it perhaps started leaking before it crash landed, for want of a better word, in Tobago.
Just like Bellingcat, we did our research as well. And we did see some satellites, some Landsat images from the 6th of February that was showing there was a vessel further out at shore, further out from our coast, and it was emitting some oil-like substance. So we weren't certain as to if it was that because the contrast wasn't that significant at the point in time. We did try to analyze it, but it would be difficult to prove that that is where the oil-like substance came from. So it was very difficult to prove a situation like that, but what we knew for certain is that on the 7th, that what we saw on the sat image was very accurate.
And as you look back at this whole situation now and the progression of it, how do you think that this impacted the island?
I would say that the location it went ashore is the ideal location. Not despite the fact that it's on the reef. However, if it was further east, there was a possibility that the entire southwest coastline would have still be filled or flooded, probably 10 times worse than it is right now with the oil-like substance. Because if it reached as far as off the coast of Venezuela, imagine all of that being emitted right along the coastline. Scarborough, the port would have had to close. More schools would have been closed, business places would have been closed. So there's a lot of socioeconomic factors that we also have to take into place, as well as there are a lot of eco-sensitive areas along the coast, like the mangroves, the reefs, turtle nesting sites, where fish breed. All of these things we have to take into consideration. So just the fact that it would have went ashore at that pinnacle, at that point of Cove, where it doesn't have any direct impact or contact with shore, we were very grateful for that. It's only unfortunate that the spill from further east is what would have caused the effects on the Scarborough, Lambeau area, Hampden, all of these places. Also, what we realized is through the cleanup efforts, there's a lot of longshore drift as well as the high tide and low tide. So one day you might pass and you realize the sea is looking very nice and it's looking clean and we're seeing a lot of progress. And then you might pass another day and there's the high tide. So the high tide will pull whatever is on the shore back into the ocean. So it's a repeating effect. So it's only going back and forth and back and forth. So it's very difficult to deal with, especially some of these areas along the Lambo stretch. They're hard to access, especially utilizing heavy machinery.
Yep.
So it's a kind of a task with the environmental conditions as well as the geographic layout of the land.
But we are lucky because where it landed, the majority was able to catch the current to take it further out to sea where there is less impact.
Yeah, that's very correct. So that's something we're very grateful for. And we're also very fortunate that it didn't go and affect any other of the Caribbean islands or any other of the islands further west of us.
Certainly. But of course, this in itself, it is a lesson for the rest of the Caribbean in terms of, how are we ready for something like this happening? Because unfortunately, there are those nefarious activities happening within, and we don't always know what's going on and what's going and coming. So we have to be prepared. It's very unfortunate, but we have to be prepared. And as we get ready to wrap the conversation this morning, I just want to give you just a few words to talk to Tobago in terms of where we are right now in our response and just an overall look at the situation. We're 12, 13 days into it. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, we began the cleanup at the Scarborough area because we wanted to ensure the operations at the port were not affected. We also looked at the eco-sensitive areas like the river mouths, etc. So we'd have boomed off these areas. Booming meaning using flotation devices to ensure that the thick oil-like substance doesn't go upstream. We placed the containment booms as well as absorbent booms. So the absorbent booms would accept or absorb any spillover from the regular booms. So that was one of the first things we did. Now the cleaning is taking place. So we try to clean from Scarborough and we head in to the west. So we're going with the current basically. Because if you try to clean from Cove, come up, it's going to be much more difficult. Now, like I said before, the environmental factors such as weather are making a big difference in the cleanup progress because sometimes when there's high tide, they have to stand down the operation based on the level of cleaning. As well as for persons who are interested in wildlife, there are a lot of wildlife capture and rehabilitation and relocation taking place. So they do go out into the rivers as well as the eco-sensitive areas. They would remove the wildlife, clean them, and based on the level of impact they have, they would either rehabilitate them or just relocate them to a safer area. 1 and 2 animals would not have made it, but a vast majority, over 80% of them would have been survived and successfully relocated and been rehabilitated. As it relates to the school aspect, we know the air quality was an issue along the coast. Now, because of the pockets there, it's difficult to clean that area, so it's very unfortunate that school has to close, but we have to take the preventative measure to close the school, and we have persons becoming ill because of the nauseating smell that they will be receiving directly.
And now we're in a situation where there's less oil leaking from the vessel, so that is a positive sign.
Yes, that is. So that's something we're also very grateful for. But that doesn't mean that we're still uncertain as to if there are other compartments that may have more hydrocarbon on the inside of it. So these operations will be conducted throughout the course of the week, and then from there we'll be able to know what is the best method forward.
Okay, great. I want to thank you so much, Mr. Mitchell, and certainly continue the good work. And we in Tobago, we really appreciate your service in this respect.
Thank you very much.
All right, viewers, well, we got to go for a quick break, but we'll be right back right after this.
Let's go!